Help me, please! I can't breathe! Somebody!
Back off! She's drowning!
Look at you. You reek. You drag her under and rob her. She's gonna die. Then we wait for someone qualified, not some street rat.
Behind them, she went under again. This time, she didn't scream. Blake shoved past him and dove in. What happened next would put a homeless black man's name on every news channel in Chicago. He saved a life, vanished without a word, and left behind something that would bring a billionaire to his knees in tears. Blake Archer hadn't always been the man on the bench. There was a time when his name meant something. Staff Sergeant Blake Archer, 3rd Battalion, 187th Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. The kind of soldier they wrote commendations about. The kind who volunteered for the missions nobody wanted. He'd enlisted at 19, not because he loved his country more than the next guy, but because there was nothing left for him in Gary, Indiana. No father, a mother who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on. A neighborhood where the fastest way out was either a uniform or a casket. Blake chose the uniform, and he was good at it. Better than good. He could strip an M4 blindfolded in under 40 seconds. He could read terrain the way some people read faces. Every shadow, every ridge, every place where the ground didn't look right. His squad called him Compass because he never got lost. Not once. Not in 3 deployments across 2 countries. James Cole was the one who gave him that name. They met during Blake's 2nd deployment. James was a fresh transfer. 22, too loud, too eager, the kind of soldier who cracked jokes during briefings and somehow got away with it. Blake couldn't stand him at first. Too much energy, too much optimism for a place where optimism got people killed. But James had a way of growing on you. He'd share his care packages without being asked. His brother Harrison sent them every month, stuffed with beef jerky and sour gummy worms and handwritten letters. James read those letters out loud in the barracks whether anyone wanted to hear them or not. "My brother says he just closed a deal on a building in Chicago," James would announce. 14 stories. I told him to save me the penthouse. "You can't afford a penthouse," Blake said once. "That's why he's saving it for me. Family discount." They laughed. And somewhere between the care packages and the night patrols and the long hours of boredom that only soldiers understand, James Cole became the closest thing Blake had to a brother. But it was the 4th deployment that changed everything. Kandahar Province, August. The heat made the air shimmer like water on asphalt. Blake's squad was running a routine patrol through the Arghandab Valley when the first RPG hit the lead vehicle, then the second, then small arms fire from 3 directions. Blake remembers the sound, not the explosions, those blur together after enough of them, but the voice. Sergeant James Cole, 24 years old, calling out from behind a burning Humvee. "Archer, I can't feel my legs!" Blake didn't think. He never did in moments like that. Thinking was for before and after. During was just muscle and instinct and a promise he'd made to himself the first time he put on body armor. No one gets left behind. He ran through open ground, rounds snapping past his ears, dust kicking up at his feet. He grabbed James by the vest and dragged him behind a wall. Then he picked him up, all 190 pounds, and carried him. 2 miles. 2 miles through enemy fire, through a canal, over a ridge, until he reached the extraction point. James was still breathing when Blake set him down, still talking. His eyes were glassy but open. "Tell my brother I'm sorry I missed his wedding." "Tell him yourself," Blake said. James smiled. Then he closed his eyes, and he didn't open them again. They gave Blake a bronze star for that, a piece of metal on a ribbon. They shook his hand in a ceremony on a forward operating base while James Cole's body was loaded onto a C-17 heading home. Blake kept James's dog tags. The Army had processed the official set, but James always wore a spare pair, a habit from his father who'd served in Vietnam. Blake slipped them off James's neck before the body bag was zipped. He told himself he'd return them to the family, someday, when he could find the words. He never found the words. He came home to an empty apartment. Elena, his wife, had been killed by a drunk driver 4 months before. The Army had notified him. He'd been given emergency leave. He flew back, buried her, and returned to base because there was nothing else to do. After his discharge, the world got smaller. The nightmares got louder. The VA wait lists got longer. He stopped showing up to appointments, stopped paying rent, stopped answering his phone. One by one, the pieces of Blake Archer fell away. The career, the apartment, the truck, the storage unit, all of it gone. All except 2 dog tags, one with his name, one with James Cole's. He wore them both, every single day, because a promise is a promise, even when you've lost everything else. Harrison Cole's office sat on the 62nd floor of a glass tower on Wacker Drive. From his desk, he could see the entire Chicago skyline, the river bending south, the marina dotted with white sails, and beyond it, Lake Michigan stretching to the horizon like a second sky. He owned 11 buildings in this city, 4 hotels, 2 shopping centers, a real estate portfolio worth $4.7 billion. Forbes had him at number 93 on their list last year. He dropped from 88 the year before, and it bothered him more than he'd ever admit. But none of that mattered when he looked at the photograph on his desk. 2 boys, one 12, one 8, standing on a dock in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, holding a bass they'd caught together, both grinning so wide their eyes were almost shut. The older one had his arm around the younger one's shoulder. Harrison was the older one. James was the younger one. James Robert Cole, born March 14, 1990. Killed in action, Kandahar Province, August 22, 2018. 24 years old. Harrison had built his empire after James died. Not despite the grief, because of it. He worked 18-hour days because the alternative was sitting still. And sitting still meant thinking. And thinking meant remembering the phone call, the chaplain's voice, the words, "regret to inform you." He never talked about James. Not to his board, not to his wife before the divorce, not to his therapist who he saw every Tuesday and spent 50 minutes discussing quarterly earnings instead of his dead brother. The only person who knew what James meant to Harrison was Sophia Cole, 21. Just graduated from Northwestern with a degree in social work, a choice that had confused every business journalist who'd ever profiled the Cole family. The billionaire's daughter, working with homeless veterans at a shelter on the South Side. "You know you don't have to do this," Harrison had told her once. "I could set up a foundation, write a check." "Uncle James didn't write a check, Dad. He showed up." Harrison had nothing to say to that. Sophia had her uncle's stubbornness, his warmth, his habit of making eye contact with people that everyone else looked through. She volunteered 3 days a week at the shelter, and she never once mentioned her last name. She was the only light Harrison had left. That Thursday afternoon, Sophia texted him a photo from North Avenue Beach. Sunglasses, iced coffee, a selfie with 2 college friends, all of them squinting in the sun. "Beach day with Ava and Ren. Don't worry wearing sunscreen, love you." Harrison typed back, "Have fun, home by dinner." He set his phone down and went back to a spreadsheet. A building in the West Loop, acquisition costs, permit timelines, numbers that made sense, numbers that didn't grieve, didn't age, didn't send selfies from beaches. 3 hours later, his phone rang. It wasn't Sophia. It was a number he didn't recognize. An ER nurse at Northwestern Memorial. "Mr. Cole? Your daughter was brought in by ambulance. She's stable, but there's something you need to see." North Avenue Beach on a Thursday in late June is the closest Chicago gets to a postcard. The sand was packed with towels and umbrellas and coolers sweating in the heat. Kids ran through the shallow water, shrieking every time a wave hit their knees. Teenagers threw a football back and forth. A man sold elote from a cart near the boardwalk, the smell of chili lime drifting across the sand. Sophia Cole sat on a striped towel near the water's edge with Ava and Ren. They'd been there since noon. 3 hours of sunscreen and iced coffee, and the kind of conversation that only happens when you're 21 and the summer feels infinite. "I'm going in," Sophia said, pulling her hair into a ponytail. "Last one in buys dinner." Ava groaned. "The water's freezing." It's Lake Michigan in June. It's always freezing. Sophia jogged into the water, gasping at the cold, then pushed through until she was waist deep. She dove under, surfaced laughing, and kept swimming. 50 yards out, she stopped and floated on her back. The sky was pale blue and enormous. The city skyline looked small from here. She didn't feel the current at first. It started like a gentle tug at her ankles, like the lake was pulling her socks off. She kicked her legs and it went away. Then it came back, stronger, a steady, invisible pull dragging her sideways and outward away from shore. Sophia tried to swim back. Her arms churned through the water, but the shore didn't get closer. It got farther. She stopped floating, kicked harder. The current pulled harder. "Ava!" she called out. Her voice cracked against the wind. "Ava!" On the beach, Ava stood up, shielded her eyes. "What?" "I'm stuck. I can't. The current." Ava looked at Ren. Ren looked at the water. Neither of them moved. Sophia went under. She came back up coughing, arms slapping the surface. "Help! Help me!" Now people noticed. Heads turned down the beach like dominoes. A man stood up from his towel. A woman grabbed her phone. Someone yelled, "Is she okay?" Someone else yelled, "Where's the lifeguard?" There was no lifeguard, not in this section. The stand was empty. A laminated sign that nobody read said the position was unstaffed due to budget cuts. Sophia went under again, longer this time. When she came back up, her arms were slower. "I can't breathe! Somebody!" 40 people stood on the shore. 40 people watched. Some recorded on their phones. Some called 911. One man paced back and forth at the water's edge, shaking his head, saying, "I'm not a strong swimmer, I'm not a strong swimmer," to no one in particular. Nobody went in. 200 feet away, on a bench facing the lake, Blake Archer heard the screaming. He'd been sitting there all afternoon. The same bench he always sat on. The same spot where the woman in the sundress had told her toddler not to look at him. The same spot where the college kid had thrown a Gatorade bottle at his feet. Blake stood up, looked at the water, saw the arms, heard the voice going thin. He didn't think. Thinking was for before and after. During was muscle and instinct and a voice in his head that sounded exactly like Sergeant James Cole. No one gets left behind. He pulled off his jacket. The dog tags swung against his bare chest. He kicked off his shoes and ran. That's when the man in the board shorts stepped in front of him. "Back off! She's drowning! Look at you, you reek! You drag her under and rob her! She's going to die!" Then we wait for someone qualified, not some street rat. Behind them, Sophia went under one more time. Her hand reached above the surface, fingers spread, grasping at nothing, then slipped below. She didn't come back up. Blake shoved past the man so hard he stumbled into the sand. Then Blake hit the water running, dove forward, and disappeared beneath the surface. The man in board shorts sat in the sand where he'd fallen, mouth open. The crowd went silent. 40 phones pointed at the lake, and for 3 long seconds, there was nothing. Just flat water and sunshine and the sound of a city holding its breath. The water hit Blake like a wall of cold glass. June or not, Lake Michigan doesn't care what month it is. Below the sun-warmed surface, the temperature drops fast. Blake's muscles seized for half a second, then unlocked. His body remembered what his mind had spent years trying to forget. How to move when everything is trying to kill you. He swam hard, not toward Sophia, toward a point 20 feet to her left. The rip current was pulling her southeast. If he swam straight at her, the current would drag them both out. So he angled, cut across the pull instead of fighting it. The same way you don't run from an avalanche. You run sideways. This wasn't something he'd learned in the Army. It was something he'd learned growing up near Lake Michigan, back when he was a kid in Gary, swimming in water that grown-ups told him to stay out of. He never listened. And that stubbornness was the only reason he knew what a rip current felt like before it killed you. 15 seconds in, he reached the edge of the current. The water shifted, the pull weakened, the surface smoothed. He adjusted and swam toward where Sophia had gone under. She was below the surface, maybe 3 feet down. Her eyes were open but unfocused. Her arms had stopped moving. Her hair floated around her face like dark seaweed. Blake dove, grabbed the back of her shirt, pulled. She was heavier than he expected. Water does that. It fills the lungs and adds weight that doesn't belong. Blake kicked hard, broke the surface, and hauled Sophia up with him. Her head lolled against his shoulder. She wasn't breathing. He hooked his arm across her chest, lifeguard carry, chin above water, and started swimming back. One arm pulling, legs kicking. The current fought him for every foot. His shoulders burned, his chest burned. The old shrapnel scar on his left side screamed with every stroke. He didn't stop. 30 seconds. That's how long it took. 30 seconds from the moment Blake hit the water to the moment his feet touched sand. It felt like 30 minutes. He dragged Sophia onto the beach and laid her on her back. The crowd had formed a half circle, 20 feet away, like they were watching something on a screen. Blake dropped to his knees beside her, tilted her head back, opened her airway. 2 rescue breaths, then hands on her chest, heel of the palm, center of the sternum, and he started compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Steady. Measured. The same rhythm he'd used on a dirt road outside Kandahar when a 19-year-old private took shrapnel to the chest and stopped breathing. 15, 16, 17. Sophia's lips were blue. Her skin was cold. Water dripped from her hair onto the hot sand, turning it dark. 25, 26. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Is she dead?" 29, 30. Blake gave 2 more breaths, watched her chest rise, watched it fall, gave it again. Nothing. He started the second round of compressions. Faster now, not panicking. Blake Archer did not panic, but pressing harder because the window was closing and he could feel it. 1, 2, 3. "Come on," he said. The first words he'd spoken all day. "Come on, breathe!" 12, 13, 14, and then it happened. The thing Blake had spent 8 years trying to bury. The sand under his knees became dirt. The beach noise became gunfire. The face below him wasn't Sophia's, it was James's. Glassy eyes, pale lips, blood soaking through the uniform. "Tell my brother I'm sorry I missed his wedding." Blake's hands faltered, just for a fraction of a second. His vision blurred, his chest locked up. The past reached through the years and grabbed him by the throat. Not again. Not this time. He blinked. The beach came back. The sun came back. Sophia's face came back. Blake pressed harder. "I'm not losing you, you hear me? Not today." 28, 29, 30. 2 more breaths. He watched her chest, watched the stillness, watched the nothing. And then, Sophia's body jerked. Her chest heaved. Then she turned her head and coughed, a deep, ugly, beautiful cough that sent lake water pouring from her mouth onto the sand. She gasped, coughed again, gasped harder. Her eyes flew open, wide and wild, staring at the sky like she'd never seen it before. Blake sat back on his heels, hands on his thighs, chest heaving, his whole body shaking, not from the cold, not from the effort, but from something older. Something that had been locked in a box inside his chest for 8 years and had just cracked open. He'd lost James. He couldn't stop it. He couldn't change it. He'd carried that failure every single day like a stone sewn into his ribs. But not today. Today, someone breathed. She was breathing. The crowd erupted, cheering, clapping, crying. Someone shouted, "Oh my God!" Someone else screamed for the paramedics. Phones that had been recording swung wildly. Ava and Ren pushed through the crowd and dropped beside Sophia, sobbing, grabbing her hands. Sophia's eyes found Blake. She looked at him, soaking wet, shirtless, ribs showing, chest heaving, and she tried to speak. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. Blake looked back at her. He didn't smile, he just nodded once. The kind of nod soldiers give each other when the mission is done and everyone's still alive. Then he stood up. Blake stood over Sophia for exactly 4 seconds. He watched her breathe, watched her chest rise and fall in a rhythm that meant she was alive, that the water was out, that his hands had done what they were trained to do one more time. Then he reached behind his neck and unclasped the chain. 2 dog tags slid into his palm. One stamped Archer, Blake A. The other stamped Cole, James R. He'd carried them for 8 years. Through the discharge paperwork, through Elena's funeral, through the shelters and the park benches and the nights when the temperature dropped below 0 and the only warm thing on his body was the metal against his chest. 8 years. He knelt beside Sophia, placed both tags gently on the sand next to her hand. Then he stood, picked up his jacket from where he'd dropped it, and turned toward the boardwalk.
Ava saw him move.
"Wait, sir! Wait, what's your name?" Blake didn't answer. "Sir, please! She wants to thank you!" He kept walking, past the towels and the umbrellas and the people who had stood there filming while a woman drowned. Past the man in board shorts, who was sitting on the sand now, staring at nothing, looking like he might be sick. Past the elote cart and the bike rack and the parking lot. He walked the way soldiers walk when they're leaving a place they're not coming back to. Straight line, eyes forward, no hesitation. By the time the ambulance pulled up, lights flashing, paramedics jumping out with a backboard and an oxygen mask, Blake Archer was gone. No name, no phone number, no address, nothing to trace. Just a wet footprint trail that dried in the sun before anyone thought to follow it. On the sand beside Sophia, the 2 dog tags caught the afternoon light. Small, dull, scratched. The kind of thing you'd walk right past if you didn't know what they meant. A paramedic noticed them while strapping Sophia onto the stretcher. He picked them up, read the names, and placed them in a plastic bag with Sophia's belongings. "These yours?" he asked her. Sophia shook her head. Her voice was raw, barely a whisper. The man who saved me. He left them." "What man?" Sophia turned her head toward the boardwalk. The crowd was thinning. Joggers were already passing through like nothing had happened. "He was right here," she said. "He was just here." But there was no one, just sand and sun and the sound of Lake Michigan lapping at the shore like it hadn't just tried to swallow someone whole. Harrison Cole drove 90 miles an hour down Lakeshore Drive. He ran 2 red lights, cut off a bus, nearly sideswiped a taxi on Michigan Avenue. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely grip the wheel. He'd been in meetings all day, zoning permits, contractor bids, the kind of numbers that usually made him feel in control. Then the phone rang, a nurse's voice. The words, "Your daughter," and "ambulance" in the same sentence. Everything after that was a blur. He pulled into the Northwestern Memorial parking garage, left the car crooked across 2 spots, and ran through the emergency entrance. His shoes squeaked on the polished floor. A security guard started to say something, but Harrison was already past him. "Sophia Cole," he said to the woman at the desk. "My daughter, where is she?" "Room 4, second curtain on the right." He pushed through, and there she was, sitting up on a gurney, wrapped in a white blanket, an oxygen tube under her nose. Her hair was still damp. Her eyes were red. She was alive. Harrison grabbed her, pulled her into him so hard the gurney shifted. He held the back of her head and pressed his face into her hair, and for 10 seconds he didn't say anything because if he opened his mouth, the only thing that would come out was a sound no 62-year-old billionaire wants anyone to hear.
I'm okay, Dad,
Sophia whispered.
I'm okay.
"What happened?" His voice cracked on the second word. She told him. The beach, the current, the water pulling her under, the man. "A man jumped in. He swam out and pulled me back. He did CPR. He saved my life." "Who was he?"
I don't know. He didn't say his name. He left.
Harrison pulled back, looked at her.
He left? He put something next to me, on the sand. Then he walked away.
A nurse came in. She handed Harrison a clear plastic bag with Sophia's belongings. Her phone, a hair tie, a waterlogged university ID, and at the bottom, 2 metal tags on a beaded chain. Harrison opened the bag, reached in. His fingers closed around the tags. He turned the first one over, read the stamped letters. Archer, Blake ASSN, blood type, branch of service. He didn't know the name, It meant nothing to him. He turned the second tag over. Cole, James R. SSN. Blood type. U.S. Army. 3rd Battalion, 187th Infantry. Harrison stopped breathing. He read it again, then again. His thumb traced the letters like he was reading Braille, like if he touched them long enough the name would change, like it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. James R. Cole. His baby brother. The kid he'd taught to ride a bike. The kid who'd called him every Sunday from base, even when it was 2 in the morning in Kandahar. The kid whose dog tags were never recovered. The Army had told him that. Officially listed as personal effects, not returned. And now they were here, in his hand, in a hospital room in Chicago, left on a beach by a man who saved his daughter and then vanished. Harrison sat down on the edge of the gurney. He didn't choose to sit. His legs simply stopped working. "Dad?" Sophia reached for his arm. "Dad, what's wrong?" Harrison stared at the dog tags, his jaw clenched, his chin trembled. Then his face broke, not slowly, not with warning, but all at once the way a dam breaks when the water's been pressing against it for years. He cried. Not the quiet, dignified kind, the kind that comes from somewhere below the chest, below the lungs, from a place that hasn't been touched in 8 years. His shoulders shook, his hands shook, the dog tags rattled against each other in his fist. Sophia had never seen her father cry, not at the funeral, not at the divorce, not once. "Dad, please, tell me what's happening." Harrison opened his hand, showed her the second tag. "This is your uncle's," he said. His voice was barely there. "This man, whoever he is, he carried your Uncle James for 8 years." Sophia looked at the tag, then at her father, then at the tag again. "Find him," Harrison said. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. "I don't care what it costs. Find him." Harrison made the first call at 9 p.m. that night, standing in the hospital hallway while Sophia slept. He called Victor Lind, the best private investigator in Chicago, retired FBI, the kind of man who found people who didn't want to be found. "I need you to find someone, tonight." "Harrison, it's 9 o'clock. Blake Archer, Staff Sergeant, U.S. Army, 3rd Battalion, 187th Infantry. That's all I have. I need everything. Service record, discharge papers, last known address. I need it by morning." Lind was quiet for a beat. "What's this about?" "He saved my daughter's life today. Then he disappeared, and he was carrying my dead brother's dog tags." Lind didn't ask another question. "I'll call you at 6. He called at 5:30. The file was thin but devastating. Blake Archer, born in Gary, Indiana, enlisted at 19, 4 deployments, Iraq twice, Afghanistan twice. Awarded the Bronze Star with Valor for actions in Kandahar Province on August 22, 2018. The citation read like a movie script that nobody would believe. Under heavy fire, Staff Sergeant Archer carried a mortally wounded team member, Sergeant James R. Cole, approximately 2 miles through hostile terrain to a casualty evacuation point. Sergeant Cole succumbed to his injuries shortly after arrival. Staff Sergeant Archer sustained shrapnel wounds to his left torso during the action. Harrison read the citation 3 times. Each time he got to the word succumbed, his throat closed. Lind kept going. After the Bronze Star, Blake served 6 more months. Then he requested discharge. The Army granted it. Honorable. He came home to Gary. His wife, Elena Archer, had been killed by a drunk driver 4 months prior. "He didn't even get to bury her on time," Lind said. "The Army flew him back, but the funeral had already happened. Family couldn't wait." After that, the trail went cold. Blake stopped paying rent in Gary, stopped showing up to VA appointments. His phone was disconnected. His bank account was closed in 2020. Final balance, $11. Lind had checked the shelters, the VA database, Cook County records, arrest records. Nothing. Hospital records, 2 visits to Stroger Hospital for hypothermia, both in January, both discharged the same day. "He's been on the streets for at least 4 years, Lind said. Maybe longer. No fixed address, no income, no phone, no social media, nothing. Where is he now? I don't know yet, but I have a lead. A volunteer at the Pacific Garden Mission on South State Street recognized his photo. Said he comes in sometimes for meals but never stays the night. She said he usually sleeps near the river, somewhere under the bridges on the South Branch. Harrison hung up and stared at the file on his kitchen table. The Bronze Star citation, Blake's service photo, young, clean-shaven, eyes sharp. A man who looked like he could carry the world. And then a second photo Lind had pulled from a shelter intake form 2 years ago. Same man, but the eyes were different, sunken, distant, the kind of eyes that have seen too much and stopped looking. Harrison picked up his keys. His driver, Paul, met him in the lobby. "Where to, Mr. Cole?" "The river. South Branch. Under the bridges." Paul looked at him. "Sir, it's 6 in the morning." "I know what time it is." "That area isn't exactly—" "Paul." Harrison's voice was quiet but final. "This man carried my brother on his back for 2 miles while people were shooting at him. The least I can do is drive 20 minutes. Paul nodded and opened the car door. They drove south through a city that was just waking up, past the coffee shops setting out sidewalk signs, past the L trains rattling overhead, past the gleaming towers Harrison owned and the crumbling blocks he didn't. The distance between the two Chicagos was 11 miles. It might as well have been 11,000. They parked on Canal Street. Harrison stepped out of the black Mercedes and looked at the bridge. Under it, in the gray morning shadow, he could see shapes, sleeping bags, shopping carts, tarps held up by rope. Somewhere under there was a man who had saved his daughter's life, carried his brother's memory for 8 years, and never asked for a single thing in return. Harrison straightened his jacket and walked toward the bridge. The smell hit Harrison first. Urine, mildew, something sweet and rotting that he couldn't name. He breathed through his mouth and kept walking. Under the bridge, the concrete was stained dark with years of weather and neglect. Shopping carts lined the walls like metal skeletons. A woman wrapped in a sleeping bag watched him from behind a cardboard partition, her eyes tracking him the way an animal tracks a stranger in its territory. Harrison walked past her, past a man talking to himself near a support column, past a pile of clothes that turned out to be a person sleeping. Then he saw him. Blake Archer sat against the far wall, legs crossed, back straight. An army jacket draped over his shoulders, a backpack at his side, olive green fraying at the straps. His beard was long and unkempt. His face was thinner than either photograph, but his eyes, even from 20 feet away Harrison could see them, were awake, alert, scanning. The eyes of a man who still checked his perimeter even in his sleep. Blake saw Harrison coming and didn't move. He watched the way he watched everything, with the calm, unblinking attention of someone who'd learned long ago that reacting too fast gets people killed. Harrison stopped 5 feet away. He didn't know what to say. He'd rehearsed a dozen versions in the car. The grateful father, the businessman with a proposition, the brother seeking closure. None of them felt right standing here, in this place, in front of this man. So he did the only thing that felt honest. He reached into his jacket pocket and held out the dog tags. Blake's eyes dropped to Harrison's hand. His jaw tightened. He stared at the tags for a long time. Then he looked up at Harrison's face. Really looked. And something shifted. "Cole," Blake said. Not a question, a recognition. "Harrison Cole. James was my brother." Blake closed his eyes just for a second. When he opened them, they were wet. "You look like him," Blake said quietly. Around the mouth, he had the same jaw. Harrison's composure cracked. He pressed his lips together and breathed through his nose. "You carried him," Harrison said. 2 miles. It wasn't enough. It was more than anyone else did." Blake shook his head. "He died in my arms. I told him to hold on. I told him evac was close. I lied." "You didn't lie. You gave him hope. Hope doesn't stop bleeding." They stood there, one in a $2,000 suit, one in a jacket he'd pulled from a donation bin, and for a moment, the distance between them collapsed. They were just two men who had loved James Cole and lost him. Harrison sat down, not on a bench, not on a chair, on the concrete, right next to Blake, his suit pants against the dirty ground, his back against the same wall. Blake looked at him sideways. "You're gonna ruin that suit." "I don't care about the suit." Blake almost smiled. Almost. They sat in silence for a while, the sound of the river moving underneath them, traffic rumbling overhead, a pigeon walking across the concrete like it owned the place. "He talked about you," Blake said. "Every Sunday he'd call you. He told me you were the smartest person he knew, said you built things, buildings, companies, said you'd take over the world if someone let you." Harrison's throat tightened. "He called me every Sunday, even when it was 2 in the morning over there." "I know. I was usually the one who told him to keep it down." Blake paused. "He said he missed your wedding. It bothered him. He talked about it more than once. I would have postponed it, if he'd asked." "He'd never ask. You know that." Harrison nodded. He did know that. Blake went quiet. He picked at a thread on his jacket sleeve. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, like the words had been sitting in his chest for years and had rusted over. "The night before the patrol, we played cards. He was terrible at poker. Couldn't bluff to save his life. Kept grinning every time he had a good hand." Blake's jaw worked. "I told him he was the worst poker player I'd ever seen. He said, 'That's because I don't believe in hiding what I'm feeling.' That was James. Everything right on the surface. No walls." Harrison made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Half laugh, half sob. "He had a photo of you in his helmet liner," Blake continued. "You and him, on a dock somewhere, holding a fish." "Lake Geneva," Harrison whispered. "He was 8. He showed it to everyone. Every new guy in the squad had to see the fish photo. He'd say, 'That's my brother. He's going to own Chicago someday.'" Harrison couldn't speak. He put his hand over his eyes and sat there, breathing, trying to hold together the thing inside him that was falling apart. "Your daughter," Blake said after a long pause. "She's okay? Because of you." Blake didn't respond to that. He just looked at the dog tags in Harrison's hand. "I was going to bring them to your family," Blake said. "James asked me to, but I couldn't. Every time I tried, I thought, if I give them back, then it's over. Then he's really gone. And I wasn't ready for that." Harrison opened Blake's hand and placed both tags in his palm, closed Blake's fingers around them. "He was never gone," Harrison said. "You made sure of that." Harrison stood up and extended his hand. Blake looked at it, then looked at Harrison's face, then at the hand again. "I'm not a project," Blake said. "I'm not your feel-good story." "I know. And I don't need charity." "This isn't charity." Harrison kept his hand out. "My brother trusted you with his life. I'm asking you to trust me with yours." Blake didn't take the hand. Not yet. He looked out at the river, at the light coming through the gaps in the bridge above them, at the city waking up on the other side of a world he hadn't belonged to in years. "Where would I even go?" he said. Not to Harrison, to the air. "I have an apartment, empty unit in a building I own on the north side. It's yours, no strings." "There are always strings, not this time." Harrison crouched down so they were eye level. "Blake, you carried my brother for 2 miles. You carried his name around your neck for 8 years. You saved my daughter yesterday and didn't even wait for a thank you. I'm not offering you strings. I'm offering you a door. What you do after you walk through it, that's up to you." Blake looked at the dog tags in his hand, ran his thumb over James's name, over the scratches and dents that 8 years of street living had pressed into the metal. Then he reached up and took Harrison's hand. Harrison pulled him to his feet. For a second, they stood face to face, close enough that Blake could see the resemblance he'd noticed earlier. The jaw, the way the eyebrows pulled together. James was still in there in his brother's face, and probably always would be. They walked out from under the bridge together. Paul was waiting by the Mercedes, trying hard to look like he wasn't watching. He opened the back door without a word. Blake hesitated at the car. "I don't remember the last time I was in a car." "Then this is going to be a weird morning for both of us," Harrison said. Blake got in. The apartment was on the 14th floor of a building on Sheridan Road. 1 bedroom. Clean. furnished. A window that looked east over the lake, the same lake that had almost taken Sophia, the same lake Blake had stared at from his bench every day. Blake stood in the middle of the living room and didn't move for a full minute. "There's clothes in the closet," Harrison said from the doorway. "Your size. If they're wrong, we'll fix it." "Bathroom?" Blake asked. "Down the hall, left." Harrison heard the door close, then the faucet, then silence for a long time. Blake was standing in front of the mirror. He hadn't seen his own face, really seen it, in over a year. The shelters had mirrors, but he'd stopped looking. Looking meant acknowledging what he'd become, and acknowledging meant feeling, and feeling was the one thing he couldn't afford. Now he looked. The face staring back was a stranger's. Hollow cheeks, deep lines around the eyes, a beard that had gone past unkempt into something closer to camouflage, like his body was trying to disappear him from the inside out. But the eyes were still his. Tired, yes. Damaged, yes. But underneath all of it, still there. Still the same eyes that had spotted movement in the Arghandab Valley from half a mile away. Still the eyes of compass. He turned on the hot water. Steam filled the room. He picked up the razor Harrison had left on the counter, new, still in the packaging, and started shaving. Each stroke took something away. Not just hair, weight, years. The slow, methodical erasure of the man on the bench, one careful line at a time. When he was done, he looked again, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he recognized himself. Blake opened the closet. Button-down shirts, slacks, a navy blue suit still wrapped in dry cleaner's plastic. Shoes lined up on the rack, 2 pairs, both leather, both brand new. He touched the sleeve of the suit jacket. His hand was shaking. "There's one more thing," Harrison said, "and you can say no." Blake turned around. "I'm starting a foundation, the James Cole Foundation. Homeless veterans, housing, mental health, job placement, everything the VA should be doing and isn't." Harrison paused. "I need someone to run the outreach program, someone who knows what it's like, someone the vets will actually trust." "You want me to work for you?" "I want you to work with me. There's a difference." Blake leaned against the closet door. His arms were crossed, but his eyes were different now. Not guarded, thinking. "I don't have a degree." "You have 4 deployments and a Bronze Star." "I haven't held a job in 4 years." "You performed CPR on a drowning woman yesterday and saved her life. I'd say your skills are current." Blake stared at him. Then he laughed. Short, rough, surprised by the sound of it. Like he'd forgotten what his own laugh sounded like. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Okay, but I have one condition." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "The foundation. Whatever building you put it in. I want a bench outside, facing the lake." Harrison smiled. The first real smile he'd made in longer than he could remember. Done. That evening, Sophia came to the apartment. She stood in the doorway holding a bag of groceries, pasta, tomato sauce, garlic bread, because she didn't know what else to bring to a man who'd saved her life. Blake opened the door, clean-shaven, haircut, wearing the navy suit with the top button undone. Sophia looked at him and her eyes filled up. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." Blake nodded. "Your uncle would have done the same." 3 months later, the James Cole Foundation opened its doors on the west side of Chicago. The building used to be a warehouse. Harrison bought it for $12 million and spent another 8 turning it into something James would have been proud of. 40 transitional housing units, a medical clinic, a job training center, and a counseling wing staffed by therapists who specialized in combat trauma. On the first day, 23 veterans walked through the front entrance. Blake was standing inside waiting for them. Navy suit, clean shoes, a lanyard with his name and title, Director of Veteran Outreach. He shook every hand, looked every man and woman in the eye. Some of them recognized him, not from the news coverage, which had been everywhere, but from the shelters, from the bridges, from the same cold nights. "You're that guy," one of them said, "from under the overpass." "Yeah," Blake said. "I'm that guy." Harrison had invited the press for the opening. Local news, a few national outlets. The story had gone viral weeks ago. Homeless veteran saves billionaire's daughter. And the internet had done what the internet does. It turned Blake into a symbol, a hashtag, a debate. But Blake didn't care about any of that. He cared about the 23 people standing in the lobby who looked the way he'd looked 3 months ago. Sophia gave the opening speech. She stood at the podium in a simple black dress and spoke without notes. 3 months ago, I was drowning. 40 people watched. One man jumped in. He didn't know my name. He didn't know my father. He didn't know anything about me. He just knew someone needed help. She paused. Her eyes found Blake in the back of the room. That man lost everything this country promised him. His career, his home, his wife, his best friend. And when the system that was supposed to catch him let him fall, he didn't stop being who he was. He saved a stranger's life and walked away without asking for anything. Not even a thank you. Her voice broke on the last word. She steadied herself. This foundation exists because of him. Because Blake Archer reminded my father, and reminded me, that the measure of a person has nothing to do with what they have. It has everything to do with what they do when no one's watching. The room applauded. Blake stood against the back wall, arms folded, jaw tight. He wasn't good at this part. The being seen part. The being thanked part. He'd spent years perfecting the art of disappearing, and now the whole world was staring at him. But he stayed. Because James would have stayed. After the ceremony, a man approached Blake in the parking lot. Mid-30s, board shorts, a face that had aged noticeably since the last time Blake had seen it. "Hey," the man said. He couldn't make eye contact. I was at the beach that day." Blake looked at him, said nothing. "I'm the one who..." The man swallowed. "I'm the one who tried to stop you." Silence. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I was so wrong." Blake studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You were." The man flinched. Blake let the silence sit for 3 seconds. Then he said, "But you showed up today. That counts for something." The man exhaled. His eyes were red. He nodded and walked away. Outside the building, facing east, there was a bench. It looked out toward the lake. A small bronze plaque was bolted to the backrest. "In memory of Sergeant James R. Cole, who showed up." Blake sat on that bench at the end of the first day. The sun was going down over the city. The lake caught the last light and held it. He reached under his collar and pulled out the dog tags, both of them. He'd asked Harrison to give them back, and Harrison had understood without needing an explanation. Blake pressed the metal against his chest, warm from his skin, scratched from the years. "We made it home, James," he said. Nobody heard him. But that was okay. The person it was meant for already knew. If this story hit you the way it hit me, drop a comment. What would you have done on that beach? Stood there or jumped in? Be honest. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because the next story might be even harder to believe.